I'm now living in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. My last videos were all about Tulum, and in this video, I'm going to get into the reasons why I moved to Playa. So let's get into it. So the main thing for me was the cost. Right now it's high season in Tulum, and it's high season in Playa as well. But Tulum is way more expensive than Playa, especially when it comes to things like grocery shopping, restaurants, going out to bars and clubs, and accommodation. For example, right now I'm renting a 2-bedroom apartment for $500 US in high season in Playa. In Tulum, right now in high season, forget about it. As a foreigner, I wouldn't have been able to find something as cheap. And speaking of accommodation, not only is it cheaper, but you also have more options and more variety when it comes to housing in Playa than you do in Tulum. If I took a taxi from my place in La Villeta in Tulum to the beach for 15 to 20 minutes, as a foreigner, that will cost me maybe between 200 and 300 pesos, maybe even more if it's high season or depending on the taxi driver. For the same amount of time here in Playa del Carmen, 15 to 20 minutes costs me about 50 pesos. So that's a huge price difference already. So your money goes much further in Playa than it does in Tulum. The next thing that brought me here was the beaches. So although Tulum has better beaches than Playa del Carmen, I find that it's easier to get to the beaches here in Playa than it is in Tulum. For example, from my place in La Villeta, it took about 15 to 20 minutes on scooter to get to the beaches in the hotel zone. And if you're taking a taxi or driving, it could be even more if there's traffic. But here in Playa, it takes me about 10 minutes to walk to the beach from my place, and even less by scooter. So overall, I enjoy going to the beach every day, something which I would not have been able to do in Tulum every day, because I felt like I was taking a day trip every time I needed to get to the beach. The fact that the beaches are in the hotel zone and Tulum Central about 30 minutes apart, it felt like I was going to a separate town as opposed to being in the same place. Whereas here in Playa, I feel like I'm part of the city and it's easier for me to get to the beach. So that's what I love about Playa del Carmen. It's easier to get a place to live by the beach. And even if you don't live by the beach, it's still easier to access the beach because you don't have to take a 15 to 20 minute taxi to get there unless you live much more in the center of town or in the outskirts. But in Tulum, I found that wherever you were outside of the hotel zone, it will still take you 15 to 20 minutes to get to the beach. So not only are you also closer to the beach, but it's just easier to walk around as well. So in terms of walkability and the beach, I find Tulum has a better beach, but Playa is more walkable, and you can be closer to the beach in Playa than you would in Tulum unless you have a lot of money. Another thing that attracted me to Playa del Carmen was I just missed having variety and options when it came to services and shopping. What I love about Playa is that there's a Walmart, there's a Chedraui, there's a Soriana, and there's several of them where you can do your grocery shopping. And there's even shopping malls. And that's what I missed about being in Tulum. As beautiful as it is and it's a beach town, sometimes you get tired of going to the same places and buying the same things because there's not a lot of variety. And I'm someone that likes to cook, so I love being able to be in Playa del Carmen and have access to a bunch of different things at my fingertips for cooking in a way that I wasn't able to do when I was in Tulum. And even simple things like services. For example, if something happened to my iPhone or my Mac, I have to come to Playa del Carmen and get it fixed. Whereas in Playa del Carmen, there's several places here in town where I can just either go get something for my Mac or get my iPhone fixed. So when it comes to services and amenities, that's another plus, and that's another reason why I came to Playa del Carmen, is just because you have more options and more availability when it comes to things. And there's also more things to do. Tulum, as you've seen in my previous videos, I loved because of the cenotes, the beaches, the great weather. It's a great place to be for nature and outdoors in a way that you won't find in Playa del Carmen. Now, Playa del Carmen has a great weather too. I mean, it's in the same state as Tulum, but the beaches, like I said, aren't as good as Tulum. But what it lacks in terms of like its beach life, it makes up for in terms of like things to do. There's the cinema, and again, grocery stores and shopping and things like that. Hands down, as a digital nomad, the Wi-Fi is the best in Playa del Carmen. Tulum has a reputation for having bad Wi-Fi. Of course, you can find co-working spaces and cafes where you can work with decent Wi-Fi. But I find that when it comes to Wi-Fi availability, it's much better in Playa del Carmen. The coverage is stronger and consistent in Playa and more widespread than in Tulum, where you have issues in certain parts of the town, for example in La Valletta, or even along the beach when it comes to Wi-Fi. So overall, as a digital nomad, working in Playa is much better than it is in Tulum. So don't get me wrong, I love Tulum and I was there for 5 months. But after a while, I felt that I needed a change in scenery. Tulum is all about yoga and meditation and spirituality and all of that. And it still has a lot of those elements. But I feel that over the past few months, because it's become a popular tourist destination, it's also become a lot about turning up and parties and the huge crowds. It's a lot more chaotic and there are a lot more crowds than when I first moved there in September 2020. Don't get me wrong, I do like to party and turn up, but I find that it's harder to avoid that in Tulum because it's much smaller. Whereas in Playa, because Playa is a bigger city or a bigger town, it's easy to avoid all the crowds and the partiers in Fifth Avenue and go to another part of Playa del Carmen where you can be in a place that's calmer and easier to work. And if I want to party, I can easily just go back to Fifth Avenue and party and do all of that. So overall, I find that Playa is more accommodating for the different types of energies. You can be a local, a foreigner, an expat, a digital nomad, someone that likes to party. Whereas in Tulum, I felt that the party scene is really beginning to take over Tulum. And with more crowds and parties, there's also been an increase in drug activity. A lot more people are coming to Tulum to take drugs. And as a result of that, there's been an increase in cartel activity. And with the increase in cartel activity, there's also been a lot of violence in Tulum over the last few months. Over the last few months, there have been shootings at places that are popular with tourists. And there have been tourists getting caught in the crossfire as well. So as a result, Tulum is becoming a lot less safe than it was before. And while Playa doesn't exactly have a reputation for being a safe place as well, I find that in Tulum it's much harder to avoid the cartel shootings and all the drug-related activity because it's much smaller. Whereas in Playa, again, if you stay away from Fifth Avenue, then your chances of being caught up in that kind of activity is less than it is in Tulum. So what I love about Playa is that you get Wi-Fi, good Wi-Fi, you get access to the beach, it's walkable, services and amenities in a beach town. So you're not in a large city, it's still very urban, but you're still by the beach. And for me, that was the main draw for me to come from Tulum to Playa. That said, I've only been here for 3 weeks, so this is my first impressions of Playa and the main reasons why I moved here. I plan on being here for a couple of more months, so wait for another video in the future where I'll give you a more in-depth guide to Playa del Carmen.